So in a nutshell, three of us want to kind of like, discuss with you a little bit about just kind of like how do we get there? Because now I hope that we've established the baseline that we want to get the right information at the right time in the right format. So those are the main key elements that we are aiming for. So how do we do that? JT, if you can go to the next slide, please. Well, we're going to look at it as a project, like any kind of an initiative. It's a business improvement project, and usually starts at the top with that realization by the executive management that we have challenges. And the way Rob put it, unless there are pains and then there's a desire to change, it's not going to happen. So there has to be, in our opinion, enough of a pain coupled with that management desire to address that pain that's going to result in this kind of an initiative. So in order to do that, we have a methodology, and we have actually a real good book that we use. I'm giving away all our toolkit stuff here to you guys. That part of those kind of projects that we'll share with you shortly. But let's go to the next slide, JT. This is our methodology. Many of you know, many of you are clients of KM. We've had the opportunity to work together. Our methodology for business advisory and technology type solutions, it's solution agnostic. So it doesn't really matter what's going to be your solution end of the day. That's not how we approach things. It's whatever is best for you. But in order to see what's best for you, we need to kind of like understand together a little bit about your strategies and your plans to be able to align your strategies and plans with the best fit solution. If you can go to the next slide, please. So what is the strategic analysis? Well, most of you are probably familiar with a concept called SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? Now, when we get involved in a dashboarding project, and this is like, I get the funny faces at the beginning. We want to do strategic analysis. This is not a strategic engagement. So we say, you know what? If you've done a strategic planning exercise, great. If you haven't, generally like someone like myself and one of my colleagues, say Rob, Mario, and other client service directors at the firm, we would facilitate what we call a rapid SWOT. It can be a 2-hour lunch that we get together, we have a discussion with the executive team, we have the whiteboard and so forth, and we kind of like come up with some of the key challenges, key drivers, where do we see opportunities or threats, where do we want to go overall in the long haul, and then we'll spend some time assessing our capabilities, in terms of people, process, technology, and data. So we get a realistic handle in terms of what is it that we have. This is what we call the what, the as-is kind of analysis. And then we would define where we want to be. This is our to be. This is what, this is where we want to, the goal that we want to achieve. Thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, I would say it's a systematic approach, and Sasan always puts it, I call it the magic wand, Sasan calls it the wish list, but really defining what's important to the company in terms of going forward. The one thing, just to go back, I think you need to be very clear in terms of what the organization and what management needs, because I know, some companies, one of my clients, they have, I think it's around 58 KPIs, right? We see the last, right. So you need to drill down to really define what you want and what you need.
Right. Good point. So after the strategic analysis, we move on to what we call the tactical analysis. And this is where we do some detailed work about, okay, so now tell us, like on a piece of paper, on a whiteboard, let's talk about some sample dashboards. What kind of a data do we want to see? What is the format of presentation, based on the earlier strategic kind of a discussion? So this is, we're kind of like designing, and we're bringing like we're kind of like bringing the vision into reality on paper. Once we have that blueprint, it's a draft blueprint, that's what we can say, okay, maybe we should look at these couple solution approaches, maybe an adaptive planning, maybe a KM dashboard approach, maybe your ERP or accounting systems module, maybe a combination of the two. Let's work and kind of like do some due diligence, because every solution has some rewards and challenges. So we want to kind of like make sure we're educated about that when we're making a decision. The worst thing that can happen is that you go into a new system, because this is fundamental, right? We're talking about setting up the mechanisms to make long-lasting change in the business, and then a year later or 2 years later, you say, well, gosh, I just attended this highly informative dashboard, workshop at Kreischer Miller, and they told me other solutions exist. Okay, so we want to go through that exercise and make sure we're doing the proper due diligence. And again, it's a very rapid fire type of an approach. No, I don't want to make it sound like it's like a dragged out process. And then we will kind of like finalize on a solution approach. Okay, so then we know we're going to do product X, product Y, and this is how much it's going to cost. This is how long it's going to take. So we go to the next slide, please. And then we basically get the work going. So this is where rubber hits the road. This is the execution phase. And we are huge believers of, I put a technology twist on it, calling a piloting approach. Doing a little pilot, like a sample representation of what we want to accomplish. And then using an iterative process to keep on improving it. And then moving on to the next thing. Robbie, would like to comment on the change management approach? Because that's really where how aggressively we introduce, how much we try to do, who we involve in the process really matters.
Yeah, I think it's important, from the engagement of team, and the key, as we discussed in the beginning, just from the overall process, to make sure that you're not running before you know how to walk. It's very important that we measure and design what we want to accomplish as a result of this project and dashboarding.
Yeah, good, thank you. And then there are some challenges. JT, if you can go on to the next slide. Well, of course, if we choose the wrong tool, then we're just going to be using the tool to fix the problem that is not designed to fix. So that's number one. That happens a lot. Of course, when I put that methodology on the board there, it's our desire for our clients when they want to engage in these initiatives to give us a holler, and we can get engaged early on in the process. A lot of times, it doesn't happen that way, right? Decision is made. We're going with product X. Can you help us out to get it going? So we're kind of like bypass that early stage. That increases the project risk because there's an assumption that that tool was the right tool. And of course, many of you are decision makers, if not all of you are decision makers. There is a political ramification for someone to say 6 months later, oh, I chose the wrong tool. And no one likes to be in that position. So as advisors, puts us at a very awkward position because then, we might have to stick our neck out, but not sure if it was the right tool or not. So that's a key element there. The data quality, the availability of the data that we talked about. Another aspect is that we try to do too much, and if you talk to salespeople for these kind of projects, what do they tell you?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Done.
No, you were just recently involved. It is the easiest thing you'll find. It's so easy. They don't even want you to talk to your IT people.
Right.
Because they want to bypass their potential due diligence, okay? And 9 out of 10, there is disappointment. If we do an industry survey or study, we always continuously find majority our CEOs and CFOs are unhappy with the level of utilization of their systems. It goes to the baseline that they underestimate their resources.
I would just add to that, I think that these dashboards can be incredibly useful, but sort of that data quality point, there's a range of, well, I'll just say effectiveness in terms of the way we see accounting departments run. And if you don't have your stuff locked down, like I'm talking about, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt in closing in a day, but let's just say closing in a week, right, which is pretty reasonable expectation for the level of technology resources. Let's just say in a private company, you don't have a lot of people sitting around with nothing to do, you got to get things done. So let's just say a week, 10 days. If you don't have that kind of stuff locked down, that it's right, it's timely, it's accurate, it's fast, and you can get to it, and that process is so ironed out, you shouldn't think about this. You got to get to that first, because that data that you're going to be looking at bits and pieces of, if you don't have the system locked down, that it's really process driven and it's really quick and done well, this isn't gonna do you any good if that data's loose and it's not properly managed and, you know, the numbers are rubbery, you know, all those kind of things. I mean, that, you really gotta focus on that first, in my opinion.
And that is such an important point. And then what happens, it forces us, when we talk about design of the dashboards and we do those discoveries, that earlier on phase, the tactical phase, it ends up pushing us and helping the clients to make sure those things are taken care of. Because nothing is worse than, and this is my IT colleagues, I always tell my IT colleagues, it would be so embarrassing to have your executive team members look at dashboards and the numbers be all wrong and inaccurate. Because when you have data problems, dashboarding brings it out to the surface. Everyone knows about it, okay? So it's an extremely important and critical prereq for a successful dashboarding project. The change management issue. Rob and I worked with a client on the dashboarding, and it was not a big company, but one thing I learned from the ownership of that company was something real simple. They started with few dashboards at a time, and they started using the dashboards in their weekly meetings. And they started holding folks accountable for the numbers in that dashboard. And then they kept on asking for more dashboards.